The most dangerous lies are the ones that place an innocent person exactly where everyone expects guilt. Olivia Carter adjusted the simple silver ribbon woven into her brown hair as warm candlelight danced across the grand corridors of Blackwood Castle. The annual Silver Moon Ball had transformed the ancient fortress into a breathtaking celebration filled with music, elegant gowns, polished marble floors, and thousands of glowing lanterns suspended beneath vaulted ceilings. Guests from neighboring packs filled every hall with laughter and conversation, while musicians performed gentle melodies that echoed through the castle. Olivia had spent the entire evening helping elderly guests find their seats, carrying baskets of fresh herbs to the royal kitchens, and quietly making certain every visitor felt welcome. She preferred serving others to standing in crowded ballrooms, and no one seemed to notice the quiet Omega moving gracefully from one task to another. No one except her younger sister, Sophia Carter. Hidden among the guests, Sophia watched every step Olivia took with careful attention. For years, she had envied the kindness that drew people naturally toward her sister. While Olivia never searched for admiration, she somehow earned it anyway. Sophia convinced herself that kindness alone could not explain such quiet respect, and jealousy slowly became the voice she trusted most. Late that evening, she approached Olivia wearing a warm smile that seemed perfectly sincere. "Would you help me with one last favor?" she asked softly. "One of the royal attendants asked me to deliver fresh lavender sachets to the guest chambers, but I promised someone I would meet them downstairs. Could you take this basket for me?" Olivia accepted without hesitation. Helping someone had always felt easier than questioning their motives. Sophia thanked her, gently pointed toward a quiet corridor seldom used during celebrations, and disappeared back into the ballroom before Olivia could ask another question. Carrying the small woven basket, Olivia followed the softly illuminated hallway lined with ancient portraits and tall windows reflecting the moonlit gardens outside. The music from the celebration gradually faded until only the quiet sound of her footsteps remained. At the end of the corridor stood a beautifully carved oak door that had been left slightly open. Believing it to be one of the assigned guest rooms, she carefully knocked. No answer came. Thinking the occupant might already be asleep, she pushed the door open just enough to place the lavender basket inside. Before she could step back, hurried footsteps echoed behind her. The heavy door unexpectedly swung wider as two castle guards rounded the corner and stopped instantly. Their surprised expressions quickly shifted into uneasy silence. Olivia looked from the guards to the elegant chamber surrounding her and immediately realized something was terribly wrong. Rich black banners embroidered with the crest of Blackwood decorated the walls, an enormous fireplace warmed the room, and a ceremonial sword rested above a carved stone mantel. This was not an ordinary guest room. It was the private chamber reserved for the Alpha King himself. Her heart began pounding as confusion replaced every other thought. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I believe this room belonged to someone else." Before either guard could answer, another quiet sound interrupted the silence. A door leading to the adjoining study slowly opened, and a tall man, wearing a simple black formal coat, stepped into the room. His calm silver eyes moved first toward the startled guards, then toward the frightened Omega standing beside the untouched basket of lavender. He recognized genuine fear on her face long before anyone spoke a single word. Outside the chamber, distant whispers had already begun spreading through the corridor as curious guests noticed unusual movement near the royal wing. Inside, Olivia stood completely still, believing one mistaken step had destroyed everything, while the Alpha King silently observed the frightened young woman before him, preparing to make a choice that no one beyond those walls would ever expect. The silence inside the royal chamber seemed to last forever as Olivia stood frozen beside the untouched basket of lavender, unable to lift her eyes from the polished marble floor. The two castle guards exchanged uncertain glances, clearly expecting immediate orders from the Alpha King. Outside the open doorway, quiet whispers drifted through the corridor as more guests slowed their steps, curious about the unusual scene unfolding within the private royal wing. Olivia could already imagine the rumors spreading before she had the chance to explain a single word. Her hands trembled slightly as she gathered enough courage to speak. "Your Majesty, I did not know this was your room. I believed I was delivering these flowers to a guest chamber. I would never enter here willingly without permission. Her voice remained soft but sincere, carrying the unmistakable sound of someone overwhelmed by confusion rather than deception. Ethan Blackwood studied her expression carefully. During years of leading Blackwood Kingdom, he had learned that fear born from guilt looked very different from fear born from innocence. Olivia's eyes reflected shock, embarrassment, and genuine uncertainty, but not calculation. He quietly looked toward the guards before giving his first instruction. Please close the door. The two guards obeyed immediately, though surprise crossed both of their faces. As the heavy oak door closed, the distant whispers outside became little more than a faint murmur. Ethan then turned back toward Olivia, his calm expression never changing. Instead of demanding explanations before everyone, he reached toward a nearby chair where a neatly folded royal travel cloak rested. He offered it to her with respectful courtesy. You appear uncomfortable, he said gently. Please take this. There is no reason for you to stand here feeling exposed to the attention gathering outside. Olivia accepted the cloak with trembling hands, still unable to understand why he remained so composed. Every story she had ever heard about powerful rulers suggested that entering a private royal chamber without permission would bring severe consequences. Yet the Alpha King showed neither anger nor humiliation. He simply treated her with dignity. After allowing several quiet moments to pass, Ethan asked only one question. Did you choose to come here? Olivia immediately lifted her eyes. No, Your Majesty. She carefully explained how Sophia had asked her to deliver the basket of lavender, how she had followed the hallway she was shown, and how she believed the room belonged to a guest. She never accused her sister directly because she still struggled to believe someone from her own family would intentionally deceive her. Ethan listened without interrupting once. When she finished, he walked toward the basket resting beside the doorway. The lavender sachets were beautifully arranged, exactly as someone preparing a thoughtful delivery would carry them. Nothing about the scene suggested secret intentions. Everything reflected an ordinary act of kindness that had somehow become an extraordinary misunderstanding. Ethan quietly nodded before looking toward the guards once more. No accusations will be made tonight, he said with calm authority. Miss Carter entered this room carrying flowers, not demands. Until facts replace assumptions, no one is to speak as though guilt has already been decided. Both guards respectfully bowed. Yes, Your Majesty. Ethan then opened the chamber door himself. Several curious guests standing farther down the corridor immediately fell silent as he stepped into the hallway. His voice remained steady and impossible to misunderstand. The evening celebration will continue as planned. There has been no disturbance requiring public concern. The gathering slowly dispersed, though curious whispers lingered beneath the music echoing from the ballroom. Olivia quietly followed several steps behind, still wrapped in the royal cloak. She whispered a grateful thank you before leaving the corridor, believing the worst had finally passed. She did not realize that somewhere among the returning guests, Sophia watched everything unfold with growing disbelief. Her carefully prepared trap had succeeded in placing Olivia inside the Alpha King's chamber. Yet the one outcome she had never imagined was the very thing that had happened. Instead of judging first and questioning later, the Alpha King had chosen to seek the truth before allowing anyone else to decide it. By the following morning, the celebration inside Blackwood Castle had ended, but the whispers had only begun. Servants carrying breakfast trays lowered their voices whenever Olivia passed through the corridors. Visiting nobles paused their conversations the moment they noticed her walking across the courtyard. No one openly accused her of wrongdoing because the Alpha King himself had ended the discussion the night before, yet uncertainty spread faster than facts ever could. Olivia kept her eyes lowered and continued with the same responsibilities she had accepted before the Silver Moon Ball. She gathered fresh herbs from the royal gardens before sunrise, prepared calming teas for elderly guests who had traveled long distances, and helped the castle healers organize supplies for the coming week. Every familiar task offered a small measure of comfort. She reminded herself that the truth did not change simply because people chose to believe rumors instead. Still, every whispered conversation felt like another invisible weight resting upon her shoulders. Across the castle, Sophia Carter watched everything unfold with growing frustration. She had expected humiliation, punishment, perhaps even immediate removal from the kingdom. Instead, Olivia continued moving through the castle with quiet dignity, while the Alpha King refused to allow public judgment without evidence. Sophia smiled politely whenever anyone approached, carefully planting small questions instead of direct accusations. It was certainly unusual, she would say with a thoughtful expression. I only hope my sister was not misunderstood. Those carefully chosen words encouraged others to imagine possibilities far beyond what anyone had actually witnessed. Ethan Blackwood noticed the change in atmosphere almost immediately. During his morning meeting with advisors, several council members cautiously mentioned the conversations spreading among visiting delegates. Rather than expressing frustration, Ethan calmly asked a single question. Has anyone brought me facts that differ from what I personally observed? The room fell silent. None of them had. Ethan ended the discussion there, reminding every advisor that leadership required patience before conclusions. Later that afternoon, he walked through the castle gardens without royal ceremony, observing the daily life continuing beyond the gossip. Near the herb terraces, he noticed Olivia kneeling beside an elderly gardener whose hands had grown stiff after many years of work. She carefully wrapped fragrant herbs into a warm cloth, explaining how the gentle heat could ease discomfort after long days spent outdoors. Her smile carried no bitterness despite the difficult morning she had endured. When the gardener thanked her, Olivia simply answered, "Kindness always feels lighter when it is shared." Ethan remained unnoticed beneath the shade of an old oak tree, quietly reflecting upon those simple words. Nothing about her actions resembled someone attempting to gain favor through appearances. She behaved exactly as she had before entering the royal chamber by mistake. Nearby, several castle servants exchanged uncertain glances as they watched the same scene. One young maid whispered, "If she wished to impress the king, why would she spend all morning helping everyone except herself?" The older steward beside her smiled gently, "Because that is who she has always been." Their quiet conversation faded into the afternoon breeze, but another pair of ears had heard every word. Hidden behind a stone archway, an elderly housekeeper frowned thoughtfully. She remembered preparing the royal corridor before the Silver Moon Ball, and suddenly recalled seeing someone else carrying an identical basket of lavender only moments before Olivia arrived. The memory was faint, almost forgotten beneath the excitement of the celebration, yet something about it refused to disappear. As evening settled across Blackwood Castle and golden lanterns illuminated the ancient walls once more, the rumors continued drifting through every hallway, but so did something far more powerful. Small observations, quiet memories, and simple acts of kindness were beginning to gather like scattered pieces of a puzzle. Long before anyone uncovered the truth, character itself had already started telling a story that deception could never successfully imitate. 3 quiet acts of kindness can reveal more truth than 100 loud accusations. The days following the Silver Moon Ball settled into a peaceful rhythm across Blackwood Castle, yet the invisible weight of suspicion still lingered in many corners of the ancient halls. Olivia Carter refused to allow whispered conversations to change the way she lived. Before sunrise, she walked through the royal gardens collecting fresh mint, lavender, and chamomile for the castle healers, greeting every gardener with the same gentle smile she had always offered. Later, she carried warm soup to an elderly groundskeeper recovering from a fever, repaired a torn blanket for one of the stable workers, and patiently read old letters aloud to a widow whose eyesight had slowly faded with age. She never mentioned the rumors surrounding her, nor did she complain about the uneasy glances that still followed her through the castle. Every quiet act reflected the same generous heart that had existed long before anyone noticed her name. Ethan Blackwood continued observing without interfering. Rather than relying upon reports delivered inside the council chamber, he preferred watching people when they believed no one important was nearby. Several times he passed through the herb gardens wearing an ordinary traveling cloak instead of royal clothing. From a distance, he watched Olivia stop her own work to comfort a frightened child searching for his parents among the castle courtyards. She knelt beside the little boy until his breathing slowed, then walked with him through the gardens until his family appeared. When the grateful parents offered her a small pouch of silver coins, she politely declined with a warm smile. "He needed help," she answered softly. "That is enough." Ethan quietly continued walking without revealing that he had witnessed every moment. Nearby, several servants who had once doubted Olivia exchanged thoughtful glances. One of the kitchen assistants quietly admitted, "Someone pretending to be kind would eventually grow tired. She never does." Those simple words stayed with everyone who heard them. Meanwhile, Sophia Carter realized the whispers she had carefully encouraged were slowly losing their strength. The more people watched Olivia, the more difficult it became to believe the cruel version of the story that gossip had created. Frustration quietly settled behind Sophia's pleasant smile as she searched for another opportunity to influence those around her. She carefully approached several visiting nobles during afternoon tea, suggesting that perhaps Olivia had only begun acting generously after receiving unexpected attention from the Alpha King. The conversation might have continued if an elderly housekeeper had not quietly interrupted. "Forgive me," the woman said respectfully, "but Miss Carter has cared for this castle exactly the same way since the day she arrived. Nothing about her changed after the Silver Moon Ball." Sophia politely smiled, yet disappointment flickered across her face before she excused herself from the gathering. Later that evening, the elderly housekeeper continued organizing supplies inside a storage room near the royal corridor when something caught her attention. Resting behind several folded tablecloths sat another woven basket identical to the one Olivia had carried on the night of the celebration. Tucked beneath the handle was a delicate blue ribbon embroidered with the letter S. The housekeeper gently lifted the ribbon into the fading afternoon light, her thoughtful expression slowly deepening. She clearly remembered seeing the same ribbon tied around Sophia's wrist during preparations for the Silver Moon Ball. At that moment, another forgotten memory quietly returned. She recalled watching Sophia disappear into the restricted hallway only minutes before Olivia had been seen entering the Alpha King's chamber. Individually, the memories seemed ordinary, but together they formed the beginning of a pattern that no longer felt accidental. As twilight settled over Blackwood Castle and lanterns illuminated the peaceful courtyards once again, Olivia remained completely unaware that her steady kindness had accomplished something arguments never could. While deception struggled to create new lies, truth was patiently gathering witnesses of its own. Truth rarely arrives with thunder. More often it appears through quiet details that everyone else overlooked. The following morning, soft sunlight spread across the stone courtyards of Blackwood Castle, while castle life slowly returned to its familiar rhythm. Olivia Carter continued caring for the royal herb gardens, completely unaware that several forgotten memories were beginning to connect in unexpected ways. She greeted every servant with the same gentle smile, delivered fresh bundles of rosemary and lavender to the healers, and spent part of the morning helping an elderly librarian organize weathered journals that had not been touched for years. Her peaceful routine never changed, even though curious eyes still followed her whenever she crossed the castle grounds. Ethan Blackwood spent the early hours meeting with neighboring Alpha leaders who remained at the castle after the Silver Moon Ball. Although discussions focused on trade, harvests, and border cooperation, his thoughts repeatedly returned to the unusual events surrounding Olivia. Experience had taught him that genuine truth often revealed itself through patience rather than pressure. Instead of forcing answers, he quietly instructed his most trusted steward to review every detail surrounding the night of the misunderstanding, no matter how small or insignificant it first appeared. Meanwhile, the elderly housekeeper who had discovered the blue ribbon returned to the restricted corridor carrying the identical woven basket she had found inside the storage room. As she carefully examined the handle, she noticed tiny scratches carved into the wood that perfectly matched the basket Olivia had carried several nights earlier. The two baskets had clearly been crafted together by the same village artisan. Suddenly, another memory returned with surprising clarity. Before the celebration began, she had personally watched Sophia Carter remove one basket from the supply table while claiming she had volunteered to distribute lavender throughout the guest wing. At the time, nothing about the request had seemed unusual. Now every forgotten detail felt important. The housekeeper immediately shared her observations with the chief steward, who quietly thanked her before requesting complete discretion until the facts could be verified. During the afternoon, another unexpected witness came forward. One of the younger castle guards remembered seeing Sophia standing near the entrance to the restricted hallway only moments before Olivia arrived carrying the basket. He had assumed she was waiting for another guest because she smiled politely before walking away toward the ballroom. Only after hearing the housekeeper's account did he realize the timing seemed strangely precise. Piece by piece, the scattered memories began forming a single, consistent story. Ethan listened carefully as each witness described what they had seen. No one claimed certainty beyond their own observations, yet every account supported the next without contradiction. Most importantly, every detail pointed toward planning rather than coincidence. Sophia, however, sensed the atmosphere quietly changing around her. Conversations suddenly stopped when she entered certain rooms. Servants who once eagerly welcomed her now answered politely before returning to their work. For the first time since the Silver Moon Ball, uncertainty reached her instead of Olivia. She attempted to appear relaxed, but every passing hour made maintaining that calm expression more difficult. Late that evening, Ethan stood alone beside the great windows overlooking the moonlit gardens as his chief steward placed the blue ribbon, the matching basket, and written witness statements upon the council table. None of the evidence alone proved the entire story, but together they painted a picture impossible to ignore. Ethan gently rested one hand upon the table before quietly saying, "Tomorrow, we will allow every voice to be heard. Truth deserves daylight, not whispers." Outside, the evening breeze carried the scent of lavender through the castle gardens where Olivia continued tending flowers beneath the fading light, never imagining that the quiet kindness she had shown every day had already become the strongest evidence in her favor, while the carefully built deception surrounding her was finally beginning to unravel. Morning sunlight streamed through the towering stained glass windows of the Blackwood Council Hall as representatives from every neighboring pack gathered. Around the great circular chamber, the polished stone floor reflected the colorful banners hanging above while respected elders, royal advisors, village leaders, and honored guests quietly took their places. News had spread quickly that the Alpha King had called a formal hearing, yet very few people understood the true reason. Olivia Carter entered the chamber wearing the same simple ivory dress and gray wool cloak she had worn throughout her stay at Blackwood Castle. She neither searched for sympathy nor expected special treatment. She simply accepted the seat offered to her with quiet dignity, folding her hands together while taking a slow, steady breath. Across the chamber, Sophia Carter appeared equally composed, greeting familiar faces with a pleasant smile that carefully concealed the growing uncertainty in her heart. Ethan Blackwood entered last, wearing a refined black royal cloak that reflected authority without unnecessary display. The room immediately fell silent as he walked to the center rather than sitting upon the elevated throne prepared for him. His decision surprised many of the council members because it placed him on the same level as everyone else present. He slowly looked around the chamber before speaking with calm conviction. "Today we are not gathered to protect pride, influence, or reputation. We are here to protect the truth. No person will be judged by rumor while I serve this kingdom." His words settled across the hall with remarkable weight. Ethan then invited the chief steward to present every verified observation collected since the night of the Silver Moon Ball. The elderly housekeeper carefully described finding the matching woven basket hidden inside the storage room together with the blue ribbon embroidered with the letter S. She explained exactly where the basket had been discovered and confirmed that she had personally watched Sophia remove an identical basket before the celebration began. The younger castle guard then stepped forward and respectfully described seeing Sophia near the restricted royal corridor only moments before Olivia unknowingly entered the Alpha King's private chamber. Another servant confirmed delivering fresh lavender to Sophia earlier that same evening. None of the witnesses exaggerated what they remembered. Each simply shared the small detail they had personally observed. Piece by piece, the scattered memories formed one clear and consistent picture. Ethan thanked every witness before quietly turning toward Olivia. "Did anyone instruct you to enter my chamber?" Olivia gently shook her head. "No, Your Majesty. I believed I was delivering lavender to a guest room because that is exactly what I was told." Her answer remained identical to the one she had given on the first night. Ethan nodded before facing Sophia. "Would you like to explain why your ribbon was attached to the hidden basket and why multiple witnesses placed you near the restricted corridor immediately before Olivia arrived. The chamber became completely silent. Sophia attempted to answer, but the carefully rehearsed confidence she had carried for days slowly disappeared beneath the growing weight of undeniable facts. She lowered her eyes as tears quietly gathered. "I only wanted someone else to receive the attention instead of her," she whispered. "I believe people would finally stop praising Olivia if they thought she had made a terrible mistake." No anger filled Ethan's expression. Instead, quiet disappointment crossed his face. He looked around the council chamber before speaking one final time. "This kingdom will never condemn an innocent person because deception sounded more convincing than honesty. From this day forward, every accusation presented before Blackwood will require evidence before judgment." Many elders slowly nodded in agreement while relief spread across the room. Olivia remained seated in silent disbelief, realizing that the burden she had carried since the Silver Moon Ball had finally been lifted, not because someone powerful had chosen to rescue her, but because one patient leader had insisted that truth should always speak before opinion. When truth finally enters a room, silence often becomes the loudest voice. No one inside the council hall moved for several long moments after Sophia's quiet confession. The heavy burden of uncertainty that had lingered over Blackwood Castle since the Silver Moon Ball seemed to dissolve beneath the simple honesty of what had just been revealed. Olivia Carter remained seated with her hands resting gently in her lap, unable to fully understand how quickly everything had changed. For days she had prepared herself to endure suspicion with patience, believing that defending her own character through arguments would only create more division. Instead, the truth had arrived through the observations of ordinary people who had simply chosen to remember what they had seen. Sophia slowly lifted her tear-filled eyes toward her older sister. The confidence she once carried had disappeared completely, replaced by the painful realization that envy had slowly transformed into deception. "I never believed it would become this serious," she whispered with trembling honesty. "I only wanted people to stop comparing me to you. Every time someone praised your kindness, I felt invisible. I convinced myself that if your reputation disappeared, people would finally notice mine." Olivia listened quietly without anger. The words hurt because they came from someone she had loved for her entire life. Yet she also recognized the sadness hidden beneath them. Ethan Blackwood remained silent, allowing both sisters the opportunity to face one another without interruption. Finally, Olivia stood and slowly crossed the polished stone floor until she stood only a few feet away from Sophia. The council members watched with complete attention, expecting bitterness after everything that had happened. Instead, Olivia spoke with gentle sincerity. "I cannot pretend your choices did not cause pain," she said softly. "But I also know that carrying resentment would only create another prison for both of us. I hope one day you learn to measure your own worth without comparing it to anyone else's." Tears quietly slipped down Sophia's face as she lowered her head. She understood that forgiveness did not erase consequences, but it offered something she had not expected to receive: hope. Ethan then stepped forward and addressed the council once more. "Justice protects both truth and mercy," he said calmly. "Miss Carter has admitted her actions freely after hearing the evidence. She will spend time serving alongside the castle staff and assisting the village families she attempted to mislead. Let every day of honest service become an opportunity to rebuild trust." None of the council members objected. The decision reflected accountability without cruelty, and many quietly nodded in agreement. As the formal gathering concluded, people who had once whispered uncertain rumors now approached Olivia with genuine respect. The elderly housekeeper warmly embraced her hands. The young castle guard apologized for silently doubting her. Several servants thanked her for continuing to treat everyone kindly, even while carrying the weight of false suspicion. Olivia accepted every apology with quiet grace, never reminding anyone how easily they had believed the worst. Later that afternoon, Ethan found Olivia once again in the royal herb gardens, carefully replanting young lavender beneath the warm spring sunlight. The peaceful fragrance drifted gently across the stone pathways as bees moved lazily between blooming flowers. Ethan smiled softly before speaking. "You never stopped being yourself, even when people misunderstood you." Olivia looked toward the endless rows of growing herbs before answering. If I had allowed bitterness to change who I was, then the lie would have stolen far more than my reputation. Ethan quietly nodded, recognizing that wisdom often appeared in the gentlest hearts. As the afternoon breeze carried the scent of fresh lavender through Blackwood Castle, the kingdom slowly began leaving its rumors behind. Yet something even greater had taken root where suspicion once lived. Trust, patiently earned through kindness, had become stronger than fear, and the path toward an entirely new beginning had quietly opened before both the Omega and the Alpha King. Spring quietly transformed Blackwood Castle into a place where every garden path seemed to carry the promise of new beginnings. Only a few weeks had passed since the council hearing, yet the atmosphere throughout the kingdom felt entirely different. The whispers that had once followed Olivia Carter through the corridors had faded into warm greetings and genuine smiles. Servants who had once watched her with uncertainty now sought her advice about herbs that could soothe sleepless nights or comfort aging parents. Children ran toward her each morning with small baskets, eager to help gather fresh flowers from the royal gardens before lessons began. Olivia accepted every conversation with the same gentle humility that had always guided her heart, never reminding anyone how differently they had treated her before the truth became known. Ethan Blackwood quietly observed these changes while continuing his daily responsibilities. He understood that trust could never be ordered by royal decree. It had to grow naturally through consistent actions, and Olivia had accomplished exactly that without ever asking for recognition. During one council meeting, the chief healer respectfully proposed creating a permanent royal healing garden where medicinal herbs could be cultivated not only for the castle, but also for villages across the kingdom. Several council members immediately turned toward Olivia, recognizing that no one possessed greater knowledge of healing plants or greater compassion for those in need. Ethan smiled gently before making his decision. "The greatest teacher is not always the loudest voice," he said calmly. "Sometimes wisdom is found in the hands that quietly care for others every single day." With unanimous support from the council, Olivia accepted responsibility for leading the new royal healing garden. She did so with visible gratitude rather than pride, promising that every harvest would serve every family equally, regardless of their pack or social standing. Throughout the following weeks, the neglected gardens beside the eastern castle walls slowly transformed into vibrant fields filled with lavender, chamomile, rosemary, mint, echinacea, and dozens of carefully cultivated medicinal plants. Elderly herbalists volunteered their knowledge while young apprentices eagerly learned beside them. Families from neighboring packs began visiting Blackwood not because of political matters, but because they had heard of the peaceful garden where anyone could receive guidance without cost. Even Sophia quietly joined the volunteers after completing her daily responsibilities serving village families. She worked silently beside Olivia, planting herbs, repairing wooden fences, and carrying fresh water without expecting praise. Although many conversations between the sisters remained gentle and brief, each passing day slowly replaced old wounds with quiet understanding. One peaceful afternoon, Ethan walked through the flourishing gardens accompanied by several visiting alpha leaders. Instead of impressive military displays or royal treasures, he proudly introduced the healing garden as one of Blackwood's greatest accomplishments. The visitors watched Olivia patiently teaching children how to identify safe medicinal flowers while elderly villagers rested comfortably beneath flowering trees. One respected alpha quietly remarked, "Your kingdom became stronger because you protected one gentle heart instead of sacrificing it to satisfy public opinion." Ethan answered with a thoughtful smile. "A ruler who cannot protect the innocent has already begun losing the kingdom, even if no one notices immediately." As golden evening sunlight settled across the endless rows of blooming herbs, laughter drifted gently through the gardens while butterflies floated above colorful flowers. Olivia paused for a quiet moment, looking across the peaceful landscape that had grown from one painful misunderstanding. She realized that kindness had never been weakness. It had simply required patience before people were willing to recognize its strength. Beneath the warm light of another beautiful spring evening, Blackwood Castle no longer remembered the royal chamber where suspicion had first begun. Instead, it remembered the healing garden where trust, compassion, and hope now flourished together, quietly preparing every heart for the remarkable future still waiting beyond the next sunrise. The greatest moments in life are rarely the ones that begin with certainty. They begin with someone choosing compassion when judgment would have been easier. Nearly 1 year after the unforgettable Silver Moon Ball, Blackwood Kingdom welcomed families from every allied pack for the annual Festival of New Light. The castle that had once echoed with uncertain whispers now overflowed with joyful conversations, music, fresh flowers, and the comforting scent of herbs growing throughout the royal healing garden. Visitors traveled many miles not only to celebrate the changing season, but also to witness the remarkable garden that had become a symbol of unity across every neighboring territory. Olivia Carter quietly walked among the blooming lavender fields wearing the same simple ivory dress that had always reflected her humble spirit. Although many people now greeted her with admiration, she accepted every kind word with the same gentle smile she had offered long before anyone knew her name. Children proudly showed her the herbs they had learned to grow, elderly visitors thanked her for remedies that had eased their pain, and young apprentices carefully recorded her lessons so future generations could continue serving others with kindness. Nearby, Sophia worked alongside other volunteers preparing baskets filled with fresh medicinal plants for families returning to distant villages. She no longer searched for attention or recognition. Instead, she quietly found peace in honest work, understanding that trust was rebuilt one faithful choice at a time. Olivia occasionally smiled toward her sister, and although neither woman could erase the past, both understood they no longer needed to remain imprisoned by it. As evening approached, Ethan Blackwood invited every guest to gather beneath the great oak overlooking the royal healing garden. Hundreds of lanterns slowly illuminated the pathways while warm golden light settled across the surrounding hills. Standing before the assembled families, elders, alpha leaders, and children, Ethan spoke with the calm confidence that had guided Blackwood through every difficult season. Many believed our kingdom became stronger because we uncovered a lie, he said. They were mistaken. We became stronger because we refused to let a lie decide another person's future. A quiet silence settled across the gathering before gentle applause spread through the crowd. Ethan then turned toward Olivia with genuine respect. 1 year ago, you entered a room by mistake. Today, because you never allowed bitterness to change your heart, you have opened countless doors for everyone else. Olivia lowered her eyes for a brief moment before looking across the smiling faces surrounding her. I once believed kindness only mattered when people noticed it, she answered softly. Now I understand kindness matters most when no one is watching, because that is when it becomes part of who we truly are. Her words lingered in the peaceful evening air as thousands of lanterns reflected across the castle gardens. Families embraced one another, children laughed beneath drifting flower petals, and music gently filled the valley below. Ethan quietly looked across the flourishing healing garden where strangers from different packs now worked side by side, without fear or suspicion. He realized the most unexpected decision he had ever made had not simply protected one innocent Omega. It had changed the way an entire kingdom understood justice. As the first stars appeared above Blackwood Castle and the fragrance of lavender drifted through the cool spring breeze, Olivia stood surrounded not by rumors, but by people who had come to know her true character. In that peaceful moment, she finally understood that a single act of fairness could grow into lasting hope, and that the strongest kingdoms are always built by those who choose to seek the truth before passing judgment, to protect compassion before pride, and to believe that every heart deserves the chance to be seen for what it truly is.